let's get into the other topic, which is kind of I don't know, follow up from kind of what I talked about last week about all the abortion stuff. But I think Robert wanted to spearhead that one. So
all right.
to you,
Well,
sir.
yeah. I mean, how could this is the news topic of that's going on right now. It's so important, and we have a lot of various states coming out with bills, and I think this is a way. To be honest, I think this is a way for us to get back to more of a federalism. I think this is really what this is gonna. Eventually, it's gonna get to. I think the Supreme Court and putting us
really
more
quick,
towards,
if you could explain what federalism means.
Federalism essentially is like where we all have, like, we're the United States of America, correct? We have 50 states. Well,
Mm-hmm.
as of right now, that kind of really doesn't mean a whole lot to a lot of people because we're so focused on, we have this one central federal government that's located in Washington D.C. kind of affects our whole life, right? We all know that. But that was not how the founders really thought about how the system worked, because they recognized that each state had different ideals, different ways of seeing things, and so each state, in a sense, was kind of like its own country in a sense, but we were united together as one country. And so, like, when we look at things like when we look back towards like the Civil War, I think it was Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson. Was it Robert? I can't remember which of those Confederate generals, but like they were saying, it's like, yeah, he wasn't for slavery, but he didn't want to fight against his own countrymen, Virginians, in the war. So that's why he ended up fighting for the Confederacy, because he
That was Robert E. Lee.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was Robert E. Lee. But yeah, he didn't want to fight his own brethren, because they would refer to each other as countrymen, my fellow Virginians. That was more of like, that was their home. They didn't see like the Union as like their home. It was like, no, Virginia is my home. These are my people, and I'm not going to take up arms against them, even though I don't necessarily agree with everything that they are fighting for. And that's essentially like what I think these new laws towards abortion is going to end up, at the very least, have us be maybe going up against the federal government to at least get some semblance of that back, because as of right now, that's kind of what we talk about, repealing Roe v. Wade and all that stuff, and it's like, oh well, that's you're trying to eliminate abortion. It's like, well, yeah, we do want that, but ending Roe v. Wade in that Supreme Court decision, that doesn't necessarily end abortion. It just hands it back to each individual state to decide what's right for themselves.
Right.
And
It'd be like
I think that's
right. Just really quickly, like this idea of like the centralized, kind of authority. It'd be like calling. It'd be like calling your mayor to ask him what you should have for dinner.
yeah, essentially.
It's like so it's like something that that you should be able to decide for yourself, but then you just pass off the decision to uh, uh, some sort of authority. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what like I think. Pardon the euphemism is I think that's what they're trying to do. Like they're trying to get one past the goalie.
Yeah. And
with all these like anti-abortion stuff. So it's like so they could actually so so one of these laws can actually get pushed up to the Supreme Court where they can then debate it and then decide whether or not that it can then repeal the really the federal like overreach with Roe versus Wade, and then
yeah,
kick the decision back to the local level or the state level.
right. And I think and obviously like repealing Roe versus Wade, that's really just the start. Obviously, like if I was king of America, which that's never gonna happen, but obviously
At
like
least not yet.
abortion's gone yesterday. It's like it's done. We're done with it. But it's kind of, I've been recently like seeing a lot of the similarities between abortion and slavery, right? I think it's a lot of the same discussions. It's like, oh well,
right. Actually, really quickly, interestingly enough, like year and a half, 2 years ago, this guy that I follow, Bill Whittle, he actually put out a video talking about. I think abortion was the topic, but he made the same exact argument. It's like we fought a war for people to be declared human beings, and the abortion topic is essentially the same thing. We are now arguing or having this fight over whether or not something that grows inside of a woman's womb is a person.
Right, and that's I just see. There's just so many similarities from we're 150 years removed from the Civil War. We're another 50 or so years away from like the Civil Rights Movement, and we're arguing the same thing again, essentially. And I think I don't know if I mentioned it here, but I've been seeing a lot of the debates back and forth on social media and stuff. And one thing I heard was, oh well, you're all worried about these fetuses in the womb, but you don't give a damn about black people. It's like, well, actually, yeah, we do, because did you know that only half of the black babies that are conceived are actually born? A lot of them are killed.
Right, New York, New York State or New York City, either one. You want to know if a black baby's gonna be born? Flip a coin. Literally.
Well, that was the original. The founder of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, hated any sort of minority. She, that was the prototypical white supremacist that they're all like saying that everyone is nowadays. And it's like that was why she put these Planned Parenthoods in these abortion clinics in neighborhoods with minorities, because she wanted to get rid of them.
Yeah, there's I dare anyone to open up Google Maps and open it up over Beverly Hills and try to find a Planned Parenthood in Beverly Hills.
Yeah, it's like I said, a good majority of them are in minority neighborhoods. It's terrible. Another thing that I heard too was where it's like, oh well, a woman could have 100 different partners and only be able to conceive like one baby, but a guy could have sex with 100 different women and impregnate all of them, and there's no regulation on his body. It's like, well, or like a regulation on him impregnating all of them. It's like, okay, well, you're right in the sense that a guy could do that, but I'm not against maybe a lot of these jackasses should be held accountable, but when you just abort the baby, that it eliminates that possibility, because now that's what these type of guys, these kind of dirtbags, abortion lets them off the hook. Like, oh well, no consequences.
I'm gonna debunk that really quick right now. There's a case. There's a story in a case either in Kansas or Kansas City. I can't in Missouri. I can't remember which. But a man went and sold his semen to a fertility clinic. A woman then goes and gets impregnated by the sperm donated or sold to that clinic, and years later, that woman tracked that guy down through that fertility clinic, even though it was supposed to be confidential. Like, his identity was supposed to be confidential. She went to that clinic, got his identity, and then sued him for child support for that child.
Yeah, that's pretty.
So to say that like a guy can go and like impregnate like 100 women and not have any like repercussions for it is bullshit. Because if a guy who had no expectations of taking care of a child when he made his donation at the fertility bank can get roped into then being on the hook for a child, then there's no reason why someone that you had sex with can't be held accountable as well.
Well, my point in bringing this particular tweet up is just because the fallacy is that, like, okay, even if that's true, like, but abortion eliminates the possibility for for there to be held any sort of accountability held.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
It just gives that guy a get out of jail free card, or get out of fatherhood free card.
So if you don't like those type of guys, which I really don't.
Yeah.
So
you're basically enabling them.
Exactly, and it's the same thing with and let's be honest, it's 5% total of the cases that deal with like rape, incest, all that stuff that they're claiming that, oh well, this is why we need abortion. It's like there's so much rape and incest going on that we need to just eliminate those consequences.
Right. Yeah, because even though it's supposed exactly on the forms when they fill out, that's like 1% of the that's like 1% of the responses like on those forms. Like the rest is like just like basically convenience, or I can't afford it, or whatever.
But the point is that even in those very low cases, it gives those guys an out, like, and they continue to rape and mutilate those women continually. That's what there's a lot of cases in which the girls who are like maybe like 13 or 14 and extremely young, and they're going into these Planned Parenthoods, brought in by their the person that's molesting them or abusing them, and getting abortions, and they share that they open up and say, I've been abused by him, and like this is why I'm pregnant. They don't report it, and they let these guys continue to do this for years and years.
Wow, is that true? Like even if like the girl identifies, like the guy that that brings her in as like the rapist or abuser, like they don't. There's no compulsion to report from Planned Parenthood.
No, because that's the thing. They profit off this shit.
Right.
They don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just, but it's like I said, it gives these horrible monsters an out. And it's like, oh, I can cover up my crimes. Here we go. Let's just kill this kid, and I'll go. And they're not going to report it, so I'm just going to go back to continuing doing what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. I mean, I'm not going to say that like it's completely like 0%. I mean, maybe there's like one case, but I haven't heard of any.
Mm.
And because these guys profit off of this shit.
Right.
If we take the way for them to profit off of this stuff, they go away.
Mm.
And I just and so there's that. But for me, I'm really I'm so excited that we're finally getting some of these some are calling it these extreme like laws or bills that are being passed in various states. I think like Missouri, Alabama, Georgia. I think there's a few other places that are considering stuff like this to oppose the ghoulish laws that are being passed in New York and Virginia and some of these other states. And what really chaps my hide is these supposed guys that have said like they're pro-life and they're for and they're anti-abortionists. They're like, oh well, man, these bills are a little, I don't know, harsh, and should we take our time? It's like, no.
Yeah. Hey, who's that one TBN guy?
Pat Robertson.
Pat Robertson, that's right. And he came out and said that those laws were draconian.
Yeah, he said, honestly, like, I wasn't
I
necessarily.
know he looks like a sweet old man, but he's an asshole.
Well, the one thing that he, as a theologian, not like a professional theologian, but I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so I.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
those of you who don't understand, that's a really old reference to a commercial for Holiday Inn.
Yeah, but when it comes to like his theology, I'm not a huge fan of his to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't. But I felt like, oh well, at least he's like pro-life. He's I think the basics of I think what it takes to at least show some sort of fruit of being a Christian. Mm-hmm. And he did compare feminism to like witchcraft, which it kind of sort of is.
Mm-hmm. True words were never spoken.
But when he came up with this, I was like, honestly, like I can't. Not that I'm like gonna want him deplatformed or anything like that, but come on, man! Like this is the same thing that guys, why we even back in the 60s when there was the civil rights movement, it's like, listen, like we've moved this at this glacial pace. It's like we want the rights that are in the Constitution that are ours. And we're just like saying like we want them recognized that haven't been recognized yet. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with this. Like, we've moved at this glacial pace. We've killed 60 million kids since Roe v. Wade was passed. I think we've moved at a slow enough pace. Like, we need to do stuff that's semi-radical. To me, it's not radical, but semi-radical, at least in optics, so we can get something moving, in a sense. Mm-hmm. And that someone like him, who's a somewhat revered head in the Christian community, to say something like that is disgusting. And I'm not, and these bills aren't a way to like, oh, we hate women, we don't care about like their rights, because I know that's what's being talked about in the press, and it's like that's not what we're talking about. It's like we care about the life of the kids. I'm done hearing like the squish arguments from supposed pro-lifers who are now like, oh well, I don't know, I don't feel so comfortable about it.
That just sounds like a little too harsh for me. It's like
these are the prototypical guys. They talk a big game, but then like when push comes to shove, now it's like now they want to back off. They don't want to like, oh well, I still want people to on the left to like me. It's like, well, get the fuck over yourself. Like this is something that
you're on the wrong side. Then if you want those guys to like you, then just start calling yourself a Democrat or start calling yourself a leftist. Don't pretend that you're someone who's like who's on the right and who's for like conservatism or some moral or someone who lives by some morality. It's just and don't get me wrong, not to say that no one on the left can be moral or live by some sort of moral code, but it's just not very likely.
There's not a lot of fruit to that there's not a lot of fruit to that
Right.
tree.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, last week was really rough for me, because I had a former classmate who, put up a screed about, the Alabama anti-abortion bill, and it was just, the post was, well, the image that she shared on Instagram was like, talking about how, this was a way for Republicans to control women, and but then like the caption, for the post was like this screed of anti-Trump. If if you're a Republican and you follow me, then just unfollow me right now. And it's basic, and she basically made the argument of like, it's only a life if the woman wants the baby.
Oh, you even get like some of the. There was on I forget which news channel. I think it was probably like MSNBC or something like that, where you had some like crazy bitch like it's like the thing that's in there is like that's not a human being.
Right.
Like
I
what?
don't know, and it broke, and like the thing that really broke my heart is because this girl, this former classmate, is expecting.
Wow.
Yeah,
What?
and so like in my mind, I was like, wrestling with what she had said, and I still haven't contacted her yet, but it's just like so, and she acknowledges the point that yes, she's having a baby, but she's gonna do the right thing by her, and she's gonna teach her not to get raped, and then it's like, well, everyone, I would hope that everyone teaches their daughter not to get raped. But then, like the reason, like, but you're absolving your daughter, like, or your future kid of all responsibility by saying, like, well, why don't you teach her to wait and and pick someone of quality to sleep with, or actually get married to, and then but like she doesn't say like, oh, I'm gonna teach my daughter to be a strong woman, to and like have her be and teach her to be with a man of quality. She just immediately said like, well, I'm gonna teach my daughter not to get raped. It's like, well, I think that's the default position. First of all,
Yeah.
I think that's the default position of all parents for their daughters.
Yeah.
But secondly, it's just like, it's like, so say you got pregnant, say, I mean, and it seems like you got pregnant by someone that she genuinely cares for and loves. But let's say that she didn't want this baby, so that means it's not alive, and she would get an abortion.
Yeah. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, and I mean and like the whole thing about like, oh, like it's if like the mother wants it, then she can do, then she can keep it, but if she doesn't want the baby, then she could get rid of it. And just like, I mean, I'm simplifying, or I'm exaggerating her words, but that's what was like, that's basically the sentiment. And it broke my heart, because like she's expecting, and like yes, she wants it, so that means it's a life. But if she didn't want it, it's so mercurial, it's crazy, you know.
The crazy thing is like, oh well, it's like we're eliminating like, oh well, this baby's not going to be wanted, he's going to grow up like poor, and it's not going to have a good life, and blah blah blah. It's like, well, first of all, like, yeah, okay, maybe not every life is going to be like perfect and great and lived in the lap of luxury, but who are you to judge like the maybe like, yeah, the parent, the person who's giving birth to that child doesn't necessarily have like, the mom or whoever isn't ready, but there are a billion options other than killing the kid. There are, I mean, people lined up around the block to adopt and foster these kids, like right now.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, and I've heard these arguments before, where it's like, well, like if these kids are born, then and they do, and then the mothers do put them up for adoption or whatever, then those will be part of the system, and then they'll get abused or whatever. It's like, Well, my response to them would be like, well, what do you care? Because you want them to be dead. So now, so you think it's more compassionate? It's more. So their argument is that it's more compassionate to kill them than for them to be alive and have a hard life.
Well, and the other thing too is you have people who are saying it's like, well, you know, our world is dying and we need to like lower the population, so just kill it. Or you have the, oh well, the world is just too tough and it's bad, so like should we really bring kids into it? And it's like, wait, well, which one is it? You know, is it like the world can't handle them anymore, or is it the world's too tough for them? And it's like it doesn't. You're not making any sense. You're making two different opposing
You're making
arguments.
contradictory arguments.